Well, the Kansas legislature did what we ultimately expected them to do, and that is vote on a proposal to try to bring the Chiefs and or the Royals over to Kansas. And while it's a great win for the teams, it's a good win for the legislature. The biggest loser on both sides of the state line is you. You come out of this as the biggest loser. This does not mean the teams are running to Kansas tomorrow. Doesn't mean it's happening next week. It may not even happen next year. All it means is that the teams got what they wanted. The teams got leverage. The teams needed leverage to then go back to Missouri, go back to Jackson County and say, what are you going to do for us now? What's your plan? How will you entice us to stay? Because now they can put this little carrot, dangle this little carrot out there and say, well, if you don't give us what we want, we're going to Kansas. And nothing will make many Missourians melt down quite like hearing the words, we're going to Kansas. That's not what a lot of people want to hear on either side of our state line. Kansans don't want to hear about going to Missouri. Missourians don't want to hear about going to Kansas. We know how old and how long that's been running for, and that's not changing anytime soon. The teams don't want to leave the area. Let's be very clear about this. They don't. When you've got brand equity going back 60-plus years, if you're the Chiefs, and obviously nearly as long for the Royals, and you've got your built-in fan base, you don't want to inherently pick up and move. So the only way for you to get leverage is to pit counties, or in this case, states and counties and cities against each other in the same region. And that's what they've effectively done. And the Kansas legislature has willingly gone along with it. And I believe they're playing their taxpayers for fools. Now, these star bonds, yes, are unique. The star bonds are not going to cost anybody more money out of the gates. You're not going to pay more money when you go shopping wherever you might go shopping where these stadiums are. Your sales taxes are not going to go up, and that's always the pitch. But if you think this ends with star bonds, you're kidding yourself. If you think the star bond deal is enough to get the thing done, you're kidding yourself. That's never how any of this goes. The star bonds are just the thing that opens up the door, right? That's all it is. It opens up the door to a possibility of these teams moving to Kansas. But there's undoubtedly going to be expenses on a more local, whether it's county and municipal level. We just don't know what they are because we don't even know where this thing would potentially go in Kansas. Obviously, the Legends is getting the most attention, but there were rumors flying around yesterday that South Johnson County could find itself in the mix. Once again, those were just rumors. Nobody said that, but those were all part of the conversation yesterday. So this is just phase one. This does not mean Missouri's done. It doesn't mean they're leaving Missouri. In fact, I still believe, as I put last night on social media, Missouri's got the edge. Now, the problem is Missouri can't get its act together. And by that, I mean, it's not just Quinton Lucas. It's Frank White, obviously, is the first and foremost person to blame for all this. But it's top to bottom. It's Quinton Lucas. It's Frank White. It's the Missouri legislature. And here's the problem as well. None of these guys really like each other. The legislature doesn't like Lucas. Lucas doesn't like the legislature. Lucas doesn't really like Frank White. Frank White doesn't really like Lucas. And nobody likes Frank. So you've got these three entities of individuals who do not care for each other on the Missouri side of the state line, but will have to figure out a way to work together to keep these teams not where they're at the Truman Sports Complex. I mean, the Chiefs should stay there, but the Royals are out no matter what. So it's just a matter of where they go. But this is going to test all of that more than ever before. But as for you, I mean, I understand people see the headlines and they say, if you're a Kansan, oh, yeah, we're going to stick it to Missouri. This is going to be outstanding. I can't wait to stick it to Missouri and get these teams over here. Okay, well, we are a long ways away from that happening. A long ways away. The people who are acting like yesterday sealed the fate of these two teams don't understand politics. They're sports people, or they just don't understand how any of this works. And that's fine. That's your prerogative. But the idea that yesterday means it's all done. No, this is just the next phase of the negotiation. We're in like maybe the fourth inning, to use a baseball analogy, of all this. That's what we're in. Now, what I find fascinating is the way that some people in the legislature, including Governor Kelly, are acting like they're doing a service here. They're acting like they're doing this as a way to keep the teams in the region. Here was the statement from Laura Kelly yesterday. She's expected to sign this bill, by the way, to use these star bonds to possibly lure the Chiefs and the Royals over to Kansas. She said here in a statement, "I pledge to work with members of both parties on policies that are beneficial to Kansans. The bipartisan effort to invite the Chiefs and Royals to Kansas shows we're all in on keeping our beloved teams in the Kansas City Metro." What's to suggest they were ever leaving? Is there a single statement of any seriousness that suggested they were ever leaving? You can't find one because it does not exist. Kansas is acting like, we're just doing a service for the region. Just try to keep the teams here. No, you're doing actually a disservice by now pitting taxpayer against taxpayer on behalf of sports teams when the overwhelming economic data suggests that typically the development is not worth the cost. And we've gone over those data points. We've gone over those studies time and time again. And I'll preface all this because it's interesting the way this falls along party lines. This is not like Republicans voting in favor of these star bonds, Democrats voting against it, or vice versa. It's this weird thing where there's Democrats against it and there's Republicans against it. This is not about the teams. It's really not about any of that. I love the teams. I mean, I'm a guy who did sports radio for 10 years of my career. I thought that was going to be what I was going to do for my entire adult life. I love going to games. I'll be out at the K in a couple of weeks with my kids. I'm fortunate to be and have gone to a bunch of Chiefs games the last couple of years. Playoff games. I mean, it's a great thrill. It's one of the best environments in all of sports. And I feel fortunate having been to a lot of big-time sporting events. So it's not like I'm an anti-sports ball guy. I love sports. I love these teams. I respect the ownership groups tremendously. John Sherman's been on the show. He's a good man. We have some mutual friends in common. The Hunt family. Don't know them, but you know what? What they've done for this town, the way I think they've stood up for traditional values at every turn, I have an immense amount of respect for and appreciation for. But it doesn't change the fact that the ultimate person that I care about in this chair is you, the taxpayer. And there's nothing that suggests that this is going to be a win for you. Nothing. They can sell you on the, rosy pictures and the rosy plans and the, pie in the sky promises. But when push comes to shove, especially since we don't have still a lot or most of the details, we should all remain skeptical on this. Every single one of us. It would be naive to take any of these people at their word. 913-408-7957. That is how you reach us here on KCMO Talk Radio. The text line, of course, is open as we get it rolling on a Wednesday morning on KCMO Talk Radio, 95.7 FM. And also, of course, on the KCMO Talk Radio app. This is on the text line. Pete, both teams said all options are on the table. Okay, and how do you define all options? You really think they are leaving? You really do? If they wanted to threaten that for leverage, they would have done it by now. There's a reason that they haven't. Of course, they're going to say all options are on the table. And they're going to hope that those of you who have been longtime sports fans around this town are like, oh boy, we've lost teams before. We're going to lose them again. But they don't want to actually say it because they don't believe it. They don't want to go anywhere. 913-408-7957. 614. We'll get to you. Also, what are the teams saying after yesterday's big news here on KCMO 95.7 FM? So what are the teams saying? The Chiefs and the Royals. Yesterday, the Star Bonds passed the Kansas legislature, the House, the Senate. Overwhelmingly, I will add, Governor Kelly expected to sign or at least just allow the bill to become law without her signature. And just to hit the reset button on this, these Star Bonds are sales tax and revenue bonds. Effectively, what they do is pay off the bonds without increasing any taxes on you, the people. The catch here is that they draw a Star Bond district, they being the legislature, and any revenues above the levels of where the revenues have been at, any of these sales taxes from those new revenues are used to pay off the bonds. That's the, I guess, most simplistic way to explain these Star Bonds. So basically, the economic growth of this made-up Star Bond district would be used to pay off the bonds. That's how you would explain these things in a couple of sentences. So that's what they are. STAR stands for sales tax and revenue bonds. Kansas, one of only a couple of states that uses Star Bonds. They're somewhat controversial depending on who you ask, how good they are, how effective they are, whether or not, they meet the promises that are made behind these things. So it's not as black and white as the pro-Star Bond people want to make it. But obviously it's a tool that Kansas has used, and it's been somewhat controversial when they are used. But it did pass, and, Governor Kelly saying, I'm going to do my job. This passed on a bipartisan basis. By the way, I don't want to hear the nonsense from Miss Bipartisan. Well, it's bipartisan, so I've got to let this happen. You got a tax cut bill that unanimously passed the House that you vetoed. Now, they did get taxes done yesterday. They got the tax cut bill done as well. But don't forget, Laura Kelly vetoed a tax cut bill that every single Republican and Democrat voted for in the Kansas House. She vetoed that. But now she's going to sign this Star Bond bill into law and make the claim of, well, it's bipartisan, so I'm always going to be Miss Middle of the Road, bipartisan. Yeah, woo. Okay, come on. Are you kidding me with that? Please. Once again, that's something that people that do sports for a living in this town don't know. They'll be like, oh, yeah, it's bipartisan. Obviously, the governor's going to go along. Well, she just, in the last few weeks, vetoed a bill that unanimously passed the House. So I don't want to hear about the bipartisan nonsense here, okay? In the meantime, what are the two teams saying about all this? Let's start with the Chiefs. And I did reach out to Mark Donovan's team to try to get the president of the Chiefs on the show. He was on the show ahead of the April 2nd vote. They turned it down for now, but they said possibly they will be willing to join the show at some point in the future. The Chiefs, in a statement, we appreciate that leaders in the state of Kansas proactively reached out to us for input on the proposed Star Bond legislation. We support their efforts to expand the existing program and congratulate them on passing the legislation in special session. We look forward to exploring the options this legislation may provide. Very tepid. We look forward to exploring the options this legislation may provide. As we told you yesterday, the teams don't even have renderings for a stadium in Kansas. All the renderings and the pretty photos you've seen, those are not from the Chiefs. They're not from anybody working with the Chiefs. They're just renderings that were put together. But it's not like the team has these grandiose plans out there and these photos and these drawings. They don't have any of that. Someone's put them together. But when you see those on the news or you see them online, they're not from the team, just to be clear. So all the Chiefs are saying here in this statement is, we support their efforts because, by the way, it's good for the team to have some leverage against Jackson County and the state of Missouri. And guess what? That's what we're going to do. We're going to look at it, and now we've got some options. It's good for them to have options. In business, it's all about options and all about leverage. And they now finally have some leverage here locally without having to, threaten to leave the region at large. So that's why it's a very good win for the teams. Meantime, the Royals, in their own statement, thanked lawmakers, said the Star Bonds bill provides the state with a pragmatic tool to achieve its economic development goals. The team said it looks forward to additional conversations as it evaluates where it will play baseball in the future. The statement adds, "We will always prioritize the best interests of our fans, associates, and taxpayers in this process." Well, for a team that insisted it needed an urban baseball stadium to succeed, I'm not sure how a field in Wyandotte County accomplishes any of that. I'm not. Which tells me and makes me wonder, was it ever really about those things? Or was it about where to get the most help? And what's the most attractive offer based on which government wants to play the biggest role? Or is it about, an urban baseball environment? I don't know the answer, but having a baseball stadium out by the Legends is basically like having a stadium out at, the Truman Sports Complex.
Or something, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering, maybe the urban baseball thing was a play for potentially more money to help develop it from another source, right? You're doing some restoration of downtown, if you will.
Maybe.
So
yes.
There's a possibility there might have been another revenue stream for a downtown location, I guess.
But
potentially.
If their thought is we needed all these other things, we needed condos, we needed restaurants, we needed other revenue streams, right? That was a big talking point they tried to sell the people on.
The Village.
The Village, yes, the Ballpark Village. Are you going to build that village in Wyandotte County? Is that village going to be a go-to destination beyond the 81 days a year? Is that enough to have a profitable ballpark village that isn't really part of anything else? I don't know the answer. I'm just curious to hear what the Royals would say about it. So we'll be reaching out at least to John Sherman, who's been a guest on this show, and see exactly where his head is at in all this. And he was a guest with us before the vote on April 2nd. So it's a very interesting time. But the biggest winners out of yesterday, it's not Kansans, it's not the state, it's not the taxpayer, it's not the residents of Wyandotte County, it's the teams. They are the biggest winners by a mile. And it's not even close because they got the leverage they so desperately wanted. 913-408-7957. We'll get some issues happening in Independence and more coming up next. What the heck is going on in Independence? My goodness. Multiple city employees have been attacked lately. The city's trying to figure out what to do about it. Happy Wednesday morning. It is great to be here on KCMO Talk Radio. John's in the house. We've got Garner in place of Mark. Mark had a Juneteenth cookout that started this morning at 6 a.m. So
he'd been busy.
Yeah, he couldn't make it. But Garner's here. Good to see you, buddy.
Yeah, it's been a minute.
I know, it has.
Yeah,
that's right.
Last January, I think.
That's right.
Yeah.
Garner was here for Mark's paternity leave since, he had to chest feed for a little bit there. But you're doing great, buddy, so it's good to see you.
Yeah, good to be here. Thank you.
And you will see and hear from Garner more as the summer rolls along and, vacations get factored into the equation and the whole 9 yards. So in Independence, leaders are considering changes after people either attacked or threatened 4 city employees recently. A spokesperson for the city said one of the employees was injured and required medical treatment. So what is going on in Independence? What's in the water over there right now? Holy cow. Here are the situations that have occurred as of late. 2 of these 3 incidents happened during the day on Monday. So this is, 2 days ago. A Parks and Rec employee required a trip to urgent care for stitches on Monday afternoon. A city spokesperson said the employee tried to stop people riding dirt bikes at Rock Creek Trail near Rotary Park. Dirt bikes are not allowed on that trail. Instead of leaving, the spokesperson said one of the people on the dirt bike headbutted the city employee. He then ran over the employee twice with the dirt bike. Zach Walker, city manager, said during Monday night city council meeting that the employee had to go to urgent care, get treated, receive stitches, and our thoughts are certainly with him. police are investigating the assault. So you have a city employee saying to a bunch of dirt bikers, hey, you can't dirt bike here. And they run over the guy twice with their dirt bike. That's a dirt bag on a dirt bike. That's what that is. My goodness. What is with people these days? Now, next story. 2 other Independence employees were verbally attacked on Monday. According to a city spokesperson, the employees work for the Community Development Department, and they were sitting in a vehicle at a job site. A member of the public blocked in the car so the employees could not leave and then proceeded to yell at the employees. Police opened an investigation into the accusations. Last but not least, in the last couple of weeks, a resident used a gun to threaten an Independence Power and Light employee. The city said police are investigating after the Independent Power and Light employee reported a man fired a gunshot at him. The worker arrived at the house to disconnect the power. So, that kind of sounds eerily similar to, what's happened when it comes to people trying to collect property taxes from individuals who are not paying them. How much of this is people who literally can't afford their bills? Although I will say this, and this is not an indictment on Independence, Power, and Light, but a couple of weeks ago, I want to say it was 2 Fridays ago, I got a call from Kate, and she tells me that there's guys at the house, and they got to work on the gas line, and then they want to come in the house, and they want to, fire up our furnace after they got to turn it off. It's like, and I'm like, okay, what do the cars say? Do they seem legit? It's like, in this day and age, you've got all my information. You can call me, you can text me, you can give me a heads up, you can email me. Instead, I've got guys showing up to the house with 3 little kids, and no one's got any heads up it's going on. And I hate to be super pessimistic, but it's a pretty dangerous world out there, and I feel like we can't trust people.
I wouldn't,
right?
No.
And I didn't. So
Good.
I didn't. I said to her, listen, what's on the side of the car that they've got now in front of the house? But, I'm going to be home in 10 minutes anyway.
I hope you mean vehicle, because surely they wouldn't be in a car.
Well, yes.
And if they were, that would be one tip-off, I would believe.
Yes.
Right.
They were in a truck.
Okay, sure.
So I just said, what truck are they in? Does it seem legit? I Googled the company, and it did seem legit. And I just said, let them work outside. I'll be home in 10 minutes anyway to talk to them. But, I will say, sometimes these companies just kind of have this assumption of, well, we're from the gas company, we're from the electric company, we're just here to do our jobs. It's like people are less trustworthy than ever right now. And COVID kind of broke us on that front because we got more isolated. We had less reason to trust people. And we got, in this place where we just kind of got into our own worlds. So you've got to find a situation and find a way to communicate better if you're some of these entities, especially public companies.
Interesting comparison, my neighborhood to yours. Grandview's a little higher density for crime than probably in the area you're at. So I find that most of the service people are very good at identifying themselves. Secondarily, there's a Facebook page, Crime Watch, and people are, hey, a guy just dressed in black showed up and beaten on, so we got Facebook looking out.
Yeah.
And I think the workers who come at least into the 64030 make sure they got their badges visible and everything. So,
well, maybe.
So I think what maybe I might suggest is you can be lulled into a sense of security. Perhaps,
yes.
When somebody shows up and you don't question it. Mm-hmm. On my side of the state line, we question.
Well,
but everybody's good about IDing. That's my point.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's how it should be. I mean, don't
Absolutely.
take the zip code of the neighborhood for granted and just assume I'm opening up the front door for you, because I'm not doing that. And I don't think any of us should be doing that. I mean, how many scams are out there right now? Yeah, I'm from the gas company. I'm just here to fix something outside the house. I'll be coming in about 10 minutes. Hope that's okay. It's like, no, it's not okay, man. It's not. So I'm not ragging on Independence. I mean, a lot of these situations I just read to you, completely unreasonable. And I think parenting is just completely failing us culturally right now. But the one I'm somewhat sympathetic to is the Independence Power and Light situation. Not that anybody should be shooting at Power and Light employees by any stretch of the imagination, but at the same time, you got to make sure, if I was in any of those jobs, You have got to do everything in your power to clearly identify yourself to homeowners and make sure everybody knows who you are and why you're snooping around a home, wanting to come into a home, and all those different things. Now, the other thing I noted, and John brought up bottom of the hour news, is this drive-by shooting that happened in Overland Park yesterday. I mean, my goodness. 149th and Hardy, calls of an armed disturbance. According to police, several young men were playing basketball in a cul-de-sac when a black vehicle drove up. The driver asked if a specific person was in the area. The young men responded, saying they didn't know who that person was. And then what happened? The driver shot several rounds into a nearby home. There were no injuries. The driver's a white male in his mid to late 20s. And there was a $25 reward that may be issued for tips. $25,000 reward that may be issued for tips that lead to an arrest in the case. Like that, you want to talk about things that don't usually happen. 149th Street in Overland Park, you got guys shooting into homes on drive-by situations. I mean, that is unheard of in Overland Park. I don't know the why behind it. No one really knows the why behind it. But it's getting dangerous out there, man. Sad to say, but it is. And it's something that you got to keep your head on a swivel about. Because if not, you're going to get caught in the crosshairs of something, it feels like right now. 6:43 on a Wednesday morning on KCMO 95.7 FM. Something happened yesterday that culturally made me feel very old as a mid-30s millennial. And it was kind of that moment where I said, okay, all right, we're getting there. Moving up, I guess, is what I said to myself. I will share with you what that was, and I think many of you will relate to it. Coming up next on KCMO 95.7 FM, streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app. Things got a little wild reading this police report from this past weekend. Oh, my goodness gracious. This is at the Jackson County GOP building, where a police report had to be filed involving somebody running for local office. So I'm going to share the police report with you here, and you do with this as you want. So the police report reads that on June 15th, so that would be Saturday, June 15th, the officer was dispatched to the Jackson County GOP building. Upon arrival, I witnessed 5 to 6 people outside the building, all highly agitated, writes the cop. I was contacted by Miss Carolyn Caton, who advised Mr. David Martin had just assaulted Miss Teresa McBride. And Mr. Martin then locked himself, I'm reading this off my phone. It's like the smallest print ever. Locked himself inside the GOP building and had taken a female volunteer hostage. I requested, this is from Officer Brian Lankard, I requested Officer Logan begin taking statements from the people outside while Officer McCoy and I tried to speak with Mr. Martin. Now, Mr. David Martin is running for a state Senate seat here in the Kansas City area. The officer says in his statement, I contacted Mr. Martin through the glass door of the GOP building. He was highly agitated, and the volunteer was also visibly distraught. I was able to convince Mr. Martin to open up the door, and Officer McCoy went inside to speak with Mr. Martin. I then escorted Miss Qualkenbush outside. Miss Qualkenbush advised that she was not concerned about her safety. She did not feel as though Mr. Martin was holding her against her will. She was just upset due to the circumstances and just wanted all this nonsense to end. So now we get to the part on how this started. Why did the cops get called out to the Jackson County GOP headquarters on Saturday? And why was there this standoff going on and these alleged hostages being taking place in the whole deal? Qualkenbush advised all of this started over a maintenance issue when one of Mr. Martin's guests clogged the toilet. And
organically, I guess?
Yes.
Probably insinuated, not
right.
with paper?
No. I mean, that's not in the police report, John, but I suppose they might have left that part out. But basically, Mr. Martin, it looks like, was hosting an event at the Jackson County GOP headquarters One of his guests clogged the toilet, and the toilet overflew into the meeting area at the Jackson County GOP headquarters. Water and excrement made its way to the building's carpet. So as a representative for the building, Ms. Qualkenbush needed to update one of the responsible members. She advised that she contacted Ms. McBride and Ms. Caton about the issue, and they responded to the scene. Once they arrived, an argument ensued over how the carpet needed to be cleaned and ended when the police arrived. Ms. Qualkenbush advised she did not witness any assault taking place, but advised the argument spilled out into the parking lot and she remained inside the building. So Mr. Martin, who's running for state Senate, had reserved the GOP building to host a Father's Day appreciation barbecue and support his state Senate campaign. And then one of his guests clogs the toilet. He claims that he was cleaning out the toilet, and that's when the back and forth ensued outside in the parking lot at the headquarters. That's unbelievable. Well, there's your story of the day right there.
Can't make this crap up. Huh?
Oh, my goodness gracious. You have fights ensuing and cops getting called to the county headquarters. And, I know a lot of the people involved. I've obviously, done MC work for them and been involved with some of their events and whatnot. But the cops are getting called out to events because people are running for state Senate. They're hosting events there. Someone's, clogging the toilet, and then they're arguing over who's cleaning the rug. I mean, like, it's kind of a no-brainer to me.
Seemingly.
The guy whose campaign events clogged the toilet should be in charge of cleaning the entire place out. I mean, that's just like how this should go. It should not be controversial. It should not result in the cops being called out. This is kind of a no-brainer. But I suppose when you get people involved running for office who have run time and time again and, really have no business running for office, this is sometimes what can end up happening. People get unreasonable, get a little rowdy, and then you have to call out the cops because somebody clogs the toilet. And it's become a running gag right now and joke on social media. I mean, everyone's kind of goofing on this thing. Oh, my goodness. What a disaster.
Do we need a new release form for Politics in a Pint?
Yeah. Oh, God.
In the corner, you will find one industrial-grade plunger.
Yeah. We don't have those at Politics in a Pint. I don't know if we need to start thinking about that. But it's a very good point there, John Anthony. See, John doesn't come out to Politics in a Pint because he's the man behind the curtain. It's amazing. I go to these events and everyone's just like, hey, it's nice to meet you people. Where's John? I really want to meet John. I want to get to know John a little bit. And it's like, okay, I'll just start sending John out to these events. I'm not sure why I need to be coming to these things anymore because everybody wants to just hang out and talk to John. But John, being the man behind the curtain, does a good job of keeping a low profile. 913-408.
Yes, enigma.
Yeah, exactly. Independence is where Cress is hanging out before we get to 8 o'clock. What's up, Cress?
Hey, Pete. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. Happy Juneteenth.
You know what? Yeah, happy Juneteenth, I guess.
Yes.
So, yeah, this happened over the weekend. David Martin was throwing an event for Father's Day, and like the police statement said, one of the guests clogged the toilet, and I guess there was excrement that was tracked through onto the carpet. And when he was confronted about how he needed to clean it, that's when chaos ensued. And Miss McBride, our vice chair, was assaulted. That's what it says in the police report. And for some reason, it states in there that he said that Miss Caton and Miss McBride, both are vice chair and secretary of the party, they were trespassing at his event, which kind of threw me off guard because it was a public event. He had it on all of his social medias and everything. So I don't understand how that would come into play. But this seems to happen with David Martin when he runs for office. I don't know what happens. Stress gets to him or whatever. It happened to a couple of our other candidates a few years back. The stress for running for office just gets to him, and stuff like this ends up happening. It's a sad deal.
Thank you, Cress. Appreciate you, buddy. That is, listen, it's a tough spot all around. And listen, if you run a lot and you keep losing, I mean, you have every right to keep doing it. But if it's getting you to the point of, holding people hostage and calling the police, probably not your deal.
I'm a little concerned on the plumbing layout here with the bathroom right next to the meeting room. I'm like, you should have been down the hall, maybe?
Yeah.
Problem elsewhere. But
once again, you got to point people in the right direction, I suppose. Unbelievable. All right. Coming up next, we're going to talk to Josh Hawley here on KCMO.